Chapter 12: The Birth of a Kingdom. Marco stared at the wall of the cave, tracing his fingers along the strange etchings carved into the stone. The patterns were old, mysterious, and though he couldn't quite make sense of them, something about them felt powerful. They reminded him of the dungeon crawler technique he'd learned, but this was different. The air around the carvings seemed to hum with ancient energy. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. Just as he was about to attempt the breathing exercise on his own, Lily appeared behind him, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "What are you doing, staring at that wall like a lost child? Come here." Marco turned to face her, blinking in confusion. "What?" Lily gestured toward him, a half-annoyed, half-amused look on her face. "You're looking at the kingdom breathing technique. It's too advanced for you to figure out alone. I'll teach it to you. You don't have time to sit here for 2 days trying to learn it yourself." She strode over, placing her hand against the wall and motioning for him to sit. "This technique is unlike any you've learned before. It allows you to create your own kingdom. A place that's truly yours. You can only create one, and it has to be in a location where no one else has claimed a kingdom. For example, this cave right here? This is my kingdom." Marco raised an eyebrow. "This dungeon?" Lily shook her head. "No, not the dungeon itself, just this small cave separated from the floors. All techniques like this start small. They grow over time, just like your dungeon crawler technique. You started by seeing better in the dark, and now, from the way you look at me, I can tell you can see through things. Walls, people, clothes." She kicked him hard before he could react, cutting off his mischievous grin as he stumbled back. "I'll explain the rest if you focus." He rubbed his side but nodded, ready to learn. Lily placed her hands on his shoulders, guiding him through the steps of the breathing technique. "You need to understand this. When you create your kingdom, you're establishing your own rules. A sanctuary of sorts, but the more you use the technique, the more your kingdom grows. Like everything else, it evolves with time." Marco followed her instructions, feeling the energy of the technique flow through him. His core, already strengthened by the dungeon crawler and fire techniques, pulsed as the new power settled within him. As he breathed deeper, the sensation of control began to form. This was his kingdom, his space, a place he could mold to his will. As they finished the lesson, Lily stood back, crossing her arms. "Good, you're learning quickly. Now, about the lower floors. Since you so kindly opened them before I was ready, I need you to kill the monsters down there. I've barely had time to strengthen myself, and the creatures are roaming freely. The force field I've put up is only stopping them from coming above the 21st floor. It's supposed to last for 6 months, tops, and after that, chaos." But Marco wasn't listening. He was too busy turning to Lena, a sparkle in his eyes. "Lena, what about your breathing technique? What can you teach me?" Lena bounced over excitedly. "Oh, mine's called Artisan's Edge. It lets me craft things, like weapons, armor, and all sorts of stuff. You can create anything you can imagine with it, but it's tricky. You have to really understand the materials you're working with." "Interesting," Marco mused, his mind racing with the possibilities. "If I combine that with what I've learned—" "Listen to me," Lily shouted, her voice echoing off the cave walls. "This is important." Marco, slightly startled but still resolute, responded, "I'll listen if you can tell me how to combine these techniques. Switching between them all the time is exhausting." Lily sighed, rubbing her temples. "Of course, you're already thinking of shortcuts." She stepped toward him, her eyes narrowing as she placed her hand on his chest. "Fine, hold still." A warm glow spread from her hand, and Marco's body trembled as his core expanded. The power that filled him was different, stronger, more adaptable. His mind buzzed with the potential as Lily pulled her hand back. "There, I've expanded your core, so it can fit the 3 techniques at once. You can combine them now, but how you combine them, that's up to you. Don't expect me to do all the work." She crossed her arms again, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Now, about those monsters." Marco was gone. He had moved without a word, already deep into his newfound power. Lily glanced around, and her eyes followed him toward the edge of the cliff. To her astonishment, the rock above the abyss began to shift and move. A roof of solid stone formed over the void, sealing off the open chasm. As the structure took shape, an opening appeared, and from it, stairs began to form, winding down from the ceiling as if the dungeon itself obeyed Marco's will. "Come look at this!" Marco shouted from above. "I made a house!" He was beaming, standing proudly in front of a small structure that now stood at the edge of the abyss. The house had a small patio with a stunning view of the endless drop below. Lena hesitated, clutching Marco's arm. I don't want to fall," she whispered. "You can't fall," Marco reassured her, his voice calm. "That's one of the rules I set. No one can leave my kingdom unless they go through the stairs." Lily watched, her mouth slightly agape at the speed of his progress. "You've already set rules?" she asked, her voice incredulous. Marco nodded. "Yep, I've already made it so no one can harm anyone here, and no one can steal." Lily sighed, shaking her head, but there was a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "Impressive. But you'll need more than a small house to manage everything I need. We need a marketplace. A real one." "A marketplace?" Marco raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Lily said, stepping forward with a more serious tone. "You're not just here to kill monsters, Marco. I need adventurers strong enough to fight those creatures on the 21st floor and beyond. This place can be a hub, a place where adventurers can gather, form parties, get stronger, and deal with the threats below." "I like the sound of that," Marco mused, imagining the possibilities. "I could craft weapons and armor for them, sell potions, maybe even information." "Exactly," Lily said, nodding. "Build a stairway wide enough for 5 people to the right of the house. Make it turn at the cliff's edge and end at the side. I'll create a portal there. That way we can control the flow of people and monsters. No one will enter from other floors unless we let them. The portal will bring them to the market, and after they buy or trade, they can go back to the floor they entered from." Marco's eyes lit up. "A marketplace, a kingdom. I'm starting to like this." Lily smirked. "I'll open the portal once you're ready to sell, but remember, you need to lay down strict rules. No fighting, no stealing. We need a place where adventurers can grow stronger, not destroy each other." "I've already done that," Marco said with a grin. "And like I said, no one can steal here. This place is under my control." Lily shook her head, smiling despite herself. "You're not half as useless as I thought, Marco." Lena beamed proudly, clinging to his arm. "My hubby's the best." Marco chuckled, taking in the view of his growing kingdom. He wasn't just a dungeon crawler anymore. He was building something that could change everything. And for the first time, he felt like he was truly in control of his fate. Chapter 13. A New Party. Marco stood at the edge of the cliff, gazing down into the abyss below, where his new kingdom was beginning to take shape. The small house he'd crafted was just the start, but the real challenge lay ahead. He needed materials, powerful items, and a lot more strength if he wanted to turn his ideas into reality. But doing all that, gathering, crafting, and becoming stronger, was too much for one person. He needed help. "I need to gather stuff to craft, but I also need to train and get stronger to access rare items," Marco muttered, frustration building. "I can't do all 3 at once." Lena, who had been quietly observing him, suddenly perked up. "I know! We can form a party with my brothers! They're strong, and together we can gather materials, craft items, and fight monsters to level up." Marco raised an eyebrow. "Your brothers?" Lena nodded enthusiastically. "Yes! I have 3 brothers who would love to join us. They're strong fighters, and we can gather everything we need much faster with their help." Just as they were about to set off, Lily's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hold it." Marco and Lena turned to see Lily walking toward them, her arms crossed and her face serious. "Lena, if you go back to where your brothers are, you won't be able to return here. You're considered a monster, and monsters can't just jump between floors freely. If you go deeper, you can't come back to the upper levels unless—" She trailed off, giving Lena a long, thoughtful look. "Unless what?" Marco asked, his curiosity piqued. Lily sighed. "Unless you renounce your monster side. You could fight for the human side instead. That's possible for you, Lena, because your mother was human. It's why you're not, well, ugly like the other goblins." Lena's cheeks turned pink at the compliment, and she shyly glanced at Marco. "I wouldn't mind you joining us next time," she teased softly. Marco's face flushed red, and his nose started to bleed, making him quickly look away to hide his embarrassment. Lily rolled her eyes. Back to the point. Lena, will you renounce your monster side? Without hesitation, Lena nodded. Yes, I want to be with Marco, and I want to help him. I'll renounce my monster side. Lily raised an eyebrow. And what about your brothers? Are they also half-human? Lena smiled. Yes, well, 3 of them are, but I have a total of 20 brothers. Some are half-elves, some are half-dark elves, and a couple are half-sheep, but Father doesn't like talking about them. Mother always says she wouldn't be surprised if Father had half-pie children somewhere. Marco blinked. Half-pie? Lena shrugged. That's what Mother says. Lily snickered. Your family sounds interesting, but it's the 3 half-human brothers we need to focus on. Will they join us? Lena nodded confidently. They won't mind joining. As long as Marco can defeat them in battle, they'll respect him. Lily burst into laughter. Marco's a silver core now. Defeating them won't be a problem. He'll crush them. Marco smirked, feeling a surge of confidence at Lily's words. All right, let's go get your brothers. The sooner we have a strong party, the sooner we can start gathering materials, making weapons, and getting stronger. Lily leaned against the cave wall, her tone becoming more businesslike. Exactly. Once we've got everything in place, stronger adventurers will come to this market. That means more resources, better gear, and access to more powerful monsters. And don't forget, she added with a wicked grin, I get 10% of whatever's gained from anyone who dies in the dungeon. Doesn't matter who it is. Lena's face fell slightly at Lily's dark humor, but Marco simply shook his head and chuckled. All right, let's go before she gets more crazy. Lena giggled, and the 2 of them started heading toward the exit of Marco's kingdom. But before they could leave, Lily called after them one more time. And remember, Marco, if we do this right, we're not just building a market. We're creating a place where people can come to prepare for the deeper floors. I need those adventurers to get stronger so they can deal with the monsters down there. The stronger they get, the more powerful the monsters I can control, and the more powerful the adventurers that'll come. Marco gave her a mock salute. Yeah, I get it. It's all part of your evil dungeon master plan, right? Lily's grin grew wider. Exactly. And don't forget, whether they live or die, I profit either way. She threw her head back and laughed, her voice echoing through the cave. Marco rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, Let's get out of here before she really loses it. As they made their way through the labyrinthine tunnels, Marco and Lena talked more about her brothers. So they're all part of your father's goblin clan? Marco asked. Yeah, Lena said with a nod. Father was always trying to make alliances with other races, which is why so many of my brothers are half-elves, half-dark elves, or half-sheep. My 3 half-human brothers, though, they're the strongest of us, and the most stubborn. Marco chuckled. Stubborn, huh? They sound like they'll be fun to deal with. Lena smiled mischievously. They are, but don't worry. As long as you beat them, they'll follow you anywhere. They respect strength above all. Marco felt a rush of determination. Good, because we're going to need all the strength we can get. They reached the passage that would take them deeper into the dungeon, and as they descended toward the lower floors, Marco felt his core pulsing with excitement. This was the beginning of something bigger. Not just for him, but for all of them. With Lena's brothers joining their party and the kingdom he was building, Marco knew that the future held endless possibilities. He could gather materials, craft legendary weapons, and lead adventurers to grow stronger. And with each step forward, they were inching closer to the heart of the dungeon, the real challenges that awaited them below. As they moved deeper into the dungeon, Marco couldn't help but smile. His journey was far from over. It was just beginning.